population qui est en situation de sévère scarcité d'aliments. Donc, on a ce qu'on appelle les Integrated Phase Classification. Et selon cette classification, la majorité de la population, c'est dans une situation extrême de sévérité et de risque de famine, ce qui je peux vous dire.
Christian,
Yeah, thank you, Moses. Just a few general points. As you know, the situation in general is very dire in Gaza, and of course the hunger and well, the food and water situation is extremely bad. Food has been cut off. Regular food supply has been cut off Gaza since more than 100 days. The water supply, the fresh water supply has been cut off. Water is salinated or mixed with wastewater now. The pumping stations partially are not working because of lack of fuel. So all basic supplies have been cut off since more than 3 months now. The population is really at the border of famine, as was discussed multiple times already, and it's definitely not getting better. It's getting worse by the day. We had a convoy just this morning trying to reach Nasser hospital with patients, healthcare staff, everybody there needing food, but the very needy population already before basically took the supplies, as we can call it. This was a self-distribution of supplies, which only shows how dire the needs are. And on top of it, a malnourished and population is very prone to catching diseases, catching infections, in a situation where they're cramped together, where housing is scarce, where shelter is bad and needed, and where infections and rashes and diseases just can spread like wildfire. And that's on top of the bombing and the shelling and the collapsing buildings.
Any other question to Francesco? I see Lisa Schlein, Voice of America. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning. This is not on trans fat. That was yesterday's story. Actually, I don't know whether it's appropriate to talk more about Gaza. I'm interested in following up on the question that was asked and on Christian's reply. So
just one second,
how do you want to deal with this?
Okay, so since I don't see other questions on the issue of the trans fats, maybe we go, unless there is other. It was at the hand, Jamie, no? Okay, so let's Francesco, if you want to stay here, no problem, but I'll now turn to Christian. If you have other questions on the health situation in Gaza, please raise your hand, and I'll give the floor again to Lisa first, as she was talking.
Yeah, Lisa, sorry, because of the discussion on the floor here, can I ask you to repeat, please?
Absolutely. I didn't actually ask a question, so but I will now. Yeah, regarding the situation that's occurring in Gaza, and you're talking about the dire situation. And now I heard an interview with Mark Rega, who is Benjamin Netanyahu's spokesperson, and this morning, and he said in regard to the possibility, which seems more likely, that UNRWA, well, it's been suspended and that it won't be able to carry out its work. He was asked whether food and water, all of the things that are necessary, would be able to go over into Gaza. He essentially said, yes, they had now 2 border crossings and that they would take care of food and everything else going in. And I'm not going to inject my own view of the situation, but I would like to ask you the question finally. If indeed UNRWA is no longer able to do the work that it has been doing because of money which is no longer going to it, what will happen? Will the humanitarian work, supplies that your organization and others want to get into Gaza be able to actually go from through the border crossings into the territory? and if not, the consequences of that. Thank you.
Christian, maybe you want to answer this. We also have online Jens. I don't know if Jens wants to say something on the general picture of the situation. Maybe I'll start with Christian. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. A very difficult situation for the people in Gaza, indeed. But I cannot speak for UNRWA. That's clear. But let me point out a few things. Dr. Tedros, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros, has said that we appeal to donors not to suspend their funding to UNRWA at this very critical moment. Cutting off funding will only hurt the people of Gaza who desperately need support. And maybe just a few figures in order to put this into context. UNRWA provides vital support to the population of Gaza, including in the health sector. As you may know, and just to put that, UNRWA is in charge of the Palestinian refugees in Gaza, and they're close to half of the population in Gaza is the refugee population. That's what UNRWA is, and who's UNRWA in charge of. The resident Gaza population, if you want to call it that way, that's what WHO is mainly concerned with in terms of health and other issues. So before the conflict, UNRWA provided care for approximately 100,000 individuals with diabetes and hypertension, for 40,000 pregnant women annually. The escalation of hostilities in Gaza made the continuation of such care extremely difficult, as daily life itself became untenable. UNRWA ran 22 health centers before the war, but by January 14, only 6 were still operating. Services provided include critical cases of non-communicable diseases, emergency outpatients, vaccinations for children, postnatal services, and the management of high-risk pregnancies. From 8 October to 31 December, a total of nearly 570,000 medical consultations were provided in the 9 operating UNRWA healthcare centers. From 8 October to 14 January, close to 1 million medical consultations were provided through medical units in shelters. By 14 January, nearly 1 million individuals were living in or near emergency shelters or informal shelters. UNRWA was operating 154 shelters, many of them school buildings. Each shelter has a designated medical team that is composed of a medical officer and a nurse. They focus on outpatient service, dispensing medication, following up with vulnerable IDPs, maternal health, coordinating the nearest health centers for case management, and. So these are vital services. The shelters, the health centers, and everything else is provided in Gaza through UNRWA. Therefore, let me repeat Dr. Tedros' words. We appeal to donors not to suspend their funding to UNRWA at this critical moment. Cutting off funding will only hurt the people of Gaza, who desperately need support. And let me, as we're at it, maybe add a few things again on context and not forget that this discussion is vital, of course, and criminal activity can never go unpunished. But the discussion right now is much of a distraction from what's really going on every day, every hour, every minute in Gaza. It's a distraction from close to 27,000 deaths by now, out of which 70% are women and children. It's a distraction from preventing an entire population from access to clean water, food, shelter. It's a distraction from preventing electricity to come into Gaza for more than 100 days. It's also a distraction from the continuous shelling of an entire population, even in areas that just moments before had been designated as safe areas. And some of the closest allies of Israel have been calling this deliberate shelling. It's a distraction from attacking shelters, schools, hospitals, whatever there is, living quarters, whether they're run by UNRWA, by the Ministry of Health, by WHO, it doesn't matter. It's a distraction. And as important as this discussion is, let's not forget what the real issues are on the ground.
Thank you very much, Christian. Quite a few additional points. We have been distributed. First of all, thanks for mentioning the figures on UNRWA. I sent you yesterday their what they call the report, situation report in the number 70, which had all these numbers. So you have all the figures there. We also distributed to you the various statements, whether by Commissioner General Lazzarini and by the Secretary General, on the actions that are being taken in relation with the funding of UNRWA. And you've seen that the Secretary General has expressed his personal. He said he is personally horrified by the accusation against the employees of the agency, but he has also spoken about the need to continue the funding of the organization for ensuring the continuity of its operations. Just wanted to add that today there will be a meeting in New York hosted by the Secretary General with the major donors for UNRWA. So we will probably hear more about this. But on the general humanitarian situation, maybe I'll give the floor to Jens, who has connected. Jens, maybe you want to add some more information about the humanitarian situation there. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Alessandra. I didn't actually ask for the floor, so I don't think I have anything to add at this point. You will all have the situation report that we issue daily, and all the details are in there.
Thank you very much. I see very many hands up, so I will start with Michelle.
Thank you, Alessandra. I wanted to follow up actually on this question. How will this impact, though, your operations from your side?
Put your mic a little bit more in front of your face. We can't.
Does that work better?
Get you through the system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how will this impact WHO's work, but also OCHA's work? I just want to know a little bit how operationally this could have an impact on what you're doing on Gaza. Thank you.
Jens, you want to say a few words? There is also the fact that we're speaking still about something hypothetical. I mean, we have declaration from member states about the fact that they are defund thinking or are already defunding UNRWA, but for the moment we are working on it. That's something that we need to be very clear about. And Sigrid Kaag has been working a lot, and she will report to the Security Council soon. So we're speaking still about something hypothetical. I don't know if OCHA, if Jens, you can say something of what would happen if UNRWA was completely stopped in its operation. But I think it's pretty hypothetical for the moment, but I'll let Jens, of course, say.
Yeah, thank you, Alessandra. But I think you touch on the key point today, and that is that UNRWA has not stopped working. UNRWA continues to work. It's the pipeline of funding that is in danger. UNRWA is irreplaceable in the humanitarian operation, as I think was very clear from what Christian said. So I will not go into hypotheticals about what if. I think everybody is working towards ensuring, as the Secretary General said, the core functions of that organization.
Exactly, and we will continue doing so. And Mr. Lazzarini has been extremely swift in his reaction, Secretary General too. So let's concentrate on what has happened instead of what could happen. I saw a lot of hands in there. No, there was Emma and then Jamie. Emma?
I don't think you'll like my question, because it was about whether the WHO and OCHA could scale up if you got extra resources, and in the event that UNRWA is defunded. It's hypothetical, but they said it could be in February, which is a few days away. So I think it's a legitimate question. Could you scale up?
Well, let me start with this, and I'm sure Jens has something hypothetically to add here. Thanks, Emma. We always said at the whole UN, anything is possible. Any deliveries are possible. Any scaling up is possible. It's not the amount of food or trucks or medical aid or whatever we should need to get in. That's all possible. It's a long process. It's approval of getting convoys in. It's about getting these cleared and checked in time. And then it's, of course, once inside Gaza, which is already very difficult, getting it distributed inside Gaza, getting approvals for convoys to move, getting every item approved, checking for dual-use items. So it is really a hypothetical question, but I would say it's not a question for us. It's a question for the powers on the ground. It's a question for the Israelis. Would they allow a scaling up? I have no doubt that the UN in general and WHO would be able to scale up whatever needs to be done. But why cut off a lifeline which is already existing, and make it even worse for those on the ground, make it even more difficult to operate? Yes, we would certainly be able to scale up under most difficult circumstances. But again, the question is not for the UN agencies, I'd say, but over to Jens for that. It's for the occupying power.
Jamie.
Thank you, Alessandra. This question is for Christian. If you could comment on the fact that armed Israeli forces disguised as men and medical workers stormed the Ibn Sina hospital in Jenin today. I don't know if you are familiar with this situation, but apparently they went in and killed 3 Palestinian militants inside the hospital. And I'm just wondering what WHO's position might be on a military raid with people disguising themselves as medical workers to carry out a military operation inside a hospital. And again, it's in Jenin. We're not talking about Gaza, of course. Thank you.
Sounds like a horrible story. I have not heard about it, so I cannot confirm or deny anything of this. Any abuse of a medical facility is prohibited. There should never be an abuse in any form or shape or way of a medical facility. But again, just to stress, I have not heard about that incident or rumor or whatever it is.
I had seen another hand in the room. Was that Ben? No, it's okay. I answered already. Go ahead. Okay, so let's go to the platform. Nick.
Yeah, thank you. Christian, you mentioned, I think that there was a convoy going to Nasser today. Is Nasser now accessible? Does that indicate that that area of Khan Yunis which has been highly conflicted, is the conflict has kind of diminished and you're able to get medical supplies in there? And secondly, I'm just curious, what are you aware of, and Jens might want to comment on this too, what steps are you aware of since Friday's ICJ ruling to actually respond to its instruction to massively increase the delivery of aid? What steps are you aware of that are being taken to follow up on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. So yeah, as far as I know, the situation around El Nasser has only gotten worse. The shooting, the fighting around, the difficulty of access for people to reach El Nasser, or the difficulty for leaving. But that's why it was so important that there was finally a clearance or deconflicting in order to reach El Nasser with necessary food supplies. No, I don't believe the situation around Al Nasser has changed. Under our understanding, it's actually gotten worse. As we keep saying, Al Nasser in the south, is what Al Shifa was in the north. It's a highly important hospital remaining in the south, but it's as much under siege and under distress, and turns into a crucial symbol.
Catherine.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Jens, you may want to add something. Sorry for the rest of the question. Sorry, Jens.
No, that's fine. And thanks for the question, Nick. I'm not aware, and I haven't seen reported anywhere that we should know about the Israelis' plans. Usually you would have to ask themselves. What we do is we report on the situation on the ground. You have the report in your inbox, and I will invite you to draw your own conclusions from that report about whether the humanitarian situation is getting better or is getting worse. Thank you.
Catherine.
Thank you. I'd like to come back on the trucks and the aid. Christian, can you confirm that 8 trucks have been blocked for the last 3 days at Kerem Shalom by Israeli protesters? Or Jens, I don't know. Both of you can answer the question. And Alessandra, would you kindly be able to send us the link of the meeting, or if we can attend, that is taking place in New York this afternoon?
Don't think it's a public meeting, but I will check.
Or the detailed info that maybe New York is going to publish related to the issue.
Sure, if we get more, I'll share it with you, of course. So Jens, on the trucks.
Yeah, I don't have any update on that. I believe Stefan in New York addressed that.
Yeah, I was looking for that. Can't find it yet, but I keep looking. But maybe Christian, you want to?
Yeah, I don't have particular information, but in general, if you look at the map, the issue about Kerem Shalom is whenever there's a disruption at Kerem Shalom, we're trying to reroute through Rafah. And Rafah, of course, is a challenge in general because it's not been laid out from the beginning to work as a clearing terminal for trucks. It was more a foot crossing issue. So any trucks having to go through Rafah is even more of a headache. But again, I'm not aware of the particular trucks that you're mentioning.
I see Mohammed.
Yes, thank you so much, Alessandra. As you know, following Israel's allegations, many countries suspended their financial support to UNRWA. My question is, don't you think this is a collective punishment for more than 2.2 million people in Gaza? And also, will this step not lead to increased famine and hunger in Gaza? Thank you.
I think, Mohammed, you can draw, as we said before, your own conclusions. Obviously, UNRWA is essential, as the Secretary General said, to the humanitarian support of 2 million people and more, but just in Gaza. And obviously, we need to make everything possible for UNRWA's operation to continue. And you draw your own conclusion on what it means. I'll give the floor to John.
Yes, good morning. It's a follow-up to the question by Jamie. I was wondering, and that's to all the reps on the podium from various UN agencies, if you have in the recent past or in the last 10 or 20 years had any incidents in your agencies where the UN emblem was misused by covert operatives in the field, and it led to the death of quite a few humanitarians. Thank you.
John, sorry, you're asking that to Jens? I'm not sure I understood your question.
No, to all the reps, to all the agencies, WHO, OCHA, if they've had cases in the field where the UN was misused by covert operatives.
Not on top of my head, John. Thank you for that. I right out of my memory, I only recall abuse of Red Cross or Red Crescent vehicles, or that yes. But to my knowledge, WHO side, but I might be wrong. I don't recall any.
Looking at Jens, but.
No, I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question. If it's something like you're asking if there's been some kind of false flag operation on the UN flag by someone else, if that's the case, not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see other hands up in the room or on the platform. So thanks for the colleagues who have been updating us on Gaza. I just wanted to say that indeed yesterday, Stéphane Dujarric confirmed that there had been blockage for parts of the day of the tracks by the Israeli protesters, but that's as much as we have at the moment. Okay, so thanks, Christian. Thanks to Francesco, who's moving out of the room. And I'd like to go now to my right to OHCHR. Jeremy, you brought us James Rodhaver that our journalists know well, the UN Human Rights Office head of the Myanmar team. James, you are with us from Bangkok, and you are going to brief on the human rights situation in Myanmar ahead of the 3rd anniversary of the coup. So you want to start, Jeremy, and then we go to James?
Yes, thanks, Alessandra. Yes, so as you say, we've got James here. He's head of our Myanmar team based in Bangkok. He can take some questions after I read this statement. 3 years after the military launched a coup, Myanmar's ever-deteriorating human rights crisis is now in freefall, with insufficient world attention paid to the misery and pain of its people. Amid all of the crises around the world, it is important no one is forgotten. The people of Myanmar have been suffering for too long. Since the end of October last year, their situation has deteriorated even further as a result of the long-established tactics of the military to target them. The High Commissioner of Human Rights, Volker Turk, said today in a statement ahead of the anniversary of the coup on the 1st of February. Pitched battles between the military and armed opposition groups have resulted in mass displacement and civilian casualties. As the military have suffered setback after setback on the battlefield, they have lashed out, launching waves of indiscriminate aerial bombardments and artillery strikes. Sources have verified that over 554 people have died since October. Overall, for 2023, the number of civilians reportedly killed by the military rose to over 1,600, an increase of some 300 from the previous year. As of the 26th of January, credible sources had documented the arrest of nearly 26,000 people on political grounds, of whom 19,973 remain in detention, some reportedly subjected to torture and abuses, and with no hope of a fair trial. Over the last 3 years, some 1,576 individuals have died while being held by the military. Rakhine State has been particularly hard hit since fighting restarted there in November. Many communities, especially the Rohingya, were already suffering from the impacts of Cyclone Mocha and the military's months-long limitation of humanitarian access and provision of assistance. There have now been several reports of Rohingya deaths and injuries amid the military shelling of Rohingya villages. On Friday, the 26th of January, fighting between the Arakan Army and the Myanmar military reportedly left at least 12 Rohingya civilians dead and 30 others wounded in Hipon Nyo Liek village, where inhabitants are trapped between the two warring parties. The Arakan Army allegedly positioned its troops in and around this Rohingya village, anticipating the military's attacks. The military repeatedly shelled the village, destroying infrastructure. Parties to armed conflicts must take constant care to spare the civilians and civilian objects in the conduct of military operations, which includes taking feasible measures to protect the civilian population under their control against the effects of attack. The international community must redouble efforts to hold the military accountable. The High Commissioner urges all member states to take appropriate measures to address this crisis, including to consider imposing further targeted sanctions on the military to constrain their ability to commit serious violations and disregard international law. A full version of this statement is now available online. I will hand over to James now for any questions.
Okay, so is there any question on this matter in the room? James? Jamie, sorry, too many James. Jamie.
Hello.
Jamie, AP, James.
Hello, Mr. Roderhaver. It's nice to see you again. It's been quite a while from when you were in Geneva. I wanted to ask you about the ceasefire that was announced by China between the Myanmar military and ethnic guerrilla groups. What's the current status of that? Are you seeing any impact on the ground?
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I guess you'd say that there is one clear impact, which is the fighting has subsided to a large degree. However, there still continue to be airstrikes and some artillery barrages by the military against positions by those three armed groups, the Three Brotherhood Alliance, the TNLA, the MNDAA, and the Arakan Army that have captured a significant amount of territory there in northern Shan. Now, the airstrikes and artillery barrages have been specifically prohibited as part of that ceasefire agreement. And the armed groups have made it very clear that the ceasefire has been repeatedly violated by the Myanmar military and that they are not responding. Now, what is unclear is that are they not responding because there is a larger strategic movement going on right now where these armed groups are repositioning themselves and trying to rearm, or whether they are being ordered by China, who is both their benefactor and of course the broker of the ceasefire, whether they are being told simply not to respond and are accepting their assurances. But it is there are still instances where civilians are being killed as a result of these barrages, so they are still very much a concern. I'd say that the last thing is that, of course, that ceasefire was negotiated with that Three Brotherhood Alliance operating in that northern Shan area. There are other armed groups that still continue to operate in that area as well. And so there's still fighting that is going on, I guess you'd say, in the periphery of that larger area that has been impacted by this Operation 1027 that's been ongoing since the 27th of October last year. So, it's something that is to keep an eye on. I think what the final aspect of all of this and what would be extremely, what we are quite eager to know more about is how these areas that have been captured, how they're being governed, because the armed groups are now very much in control of those areas. In some of the towns and villages, they've handed over administration to the civilian civil servants that work primarily with the National Unity Government. So we're quite keen to see what impact that's had, and also, of course, whether or not humanitarian access is going to expand in those areas, and whether the needs of the civilian population are going to be better cared for.
Thank you very much. I look at the room again. So let's go to the platform. Nick Bruce, the New York Times.
Hi, James. Good to see you again. Thanks for the notes, the comments. it sounds as if you're saying Arakan army are pretty systematically using the Rohingyas as kind of human shields in this conflict. Would you confirm that? And second thing is another question. We had a statement from WAMM also saying that they have collected large amounts of data over the last 3 years on the main perpetrators of human rights abuses. In terms of promoting accountability, is there any intention to let us have the names of some of these guys so that the international community can take follow-up action to target them? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Well, the first question on Rakhine State, I mean, the situation there is very dire, and it's really the worst case scenario that we feared, and that's specifically because in 2022 there was a 3-month period where Rakhine State returned to a state of armed conflict, and there were very clear patterns that emerged from the fighting between the Arakan army and the Myanmar military. And that is that they both actively tried to position themselves so that essentially the Rohingya villages were the battlefield that they chose to fight on. And at the time, that had led to a limited number of civilian casualties, but it led to a lot of civilian displacement. And given that the Rohingya villages that are, the Rohingya population that's still there in Rakhine, and those villages, they are often under very strict movement restrictions. So there are very few places people could flee to. And but right now, with the situation where, again, there are at least several instances now where you have the Arakan army and the Myanmar military both wanting to take up positions, insinuating themselves on the edges of Rohingya villages, or even in some cases, taking up positions inside schools in Rohingya villages or in mosques in Rohingya villages. And then using those as staging grounds for artillery attacks, mortar fire, and other, and of course, spotting for, communications with airplanes before airstrikes. All of that sort of behavior is ongoing right now. And whenever you look at the humanitarian situation in Rakhine, which was already dire because of the impacts of Cyclone Mocha last year, and the Myanmar military's deliberate denial of humanitarian access to many communities, limiting humanitarian access, limiting what kinds of services can be delivered to these communities. It has an outsized impact on the Rohingya population.
Thank you very much. Lisa, Voice of America.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about the second part of Nick's question about accountability.
Please go.
If you don't mind, let me just quickly address that. Of course, delivering names in public is a practice that many UN mechanisms have been asked to do in past, but have not. And that's specifically because they are trying to respect the presumption of innocence. And of course, they don't want to deliver names without first having a guarantee that prosecution is going to follow. In many cases, it's basically if you're wanting people like OHCHR or the IIMM to release names, you're almost asking us to fire, our one shot from our musket in the air, and rather than waiting until it's properly aimed at a target, if it's not completely tasted. Accountability, but it really is, in the end, I think, up to the IIMM and the prosecutors that they cooperate with as to how and when they will make such names available to the public. But I would say that it's sort of the gold standard anytime you're investigating these sorts of violations, that you are trying to find out, okay, who are the commanding officers of the forces in that area? Who are the Air Force commanders for the bases where the planes that are conducting these attacks, where they're coming from? So it is something that we always have an eye on to try and ensure that we have the proper detailed information to make the documentation we do as useful as possible for future accountability.
Indeed. Lisa.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Good morning, James. I don't know where to begin, really. Actually, what is it? What can break the logjam, if I may say? That is, ASEAN, for instance, seems to be pretty toothless organization. China, I guess, which has the most influence, doesn't appear to be using it in a peaceful manner, if I may say. And are weapons still flowing in unabated to the junta? And then I'm wondering whether are any humanitarian agencies able to work in the country or have essentially been banished from Myanmar? And I'm wondering whether the Rohingya are still fleeing, if they're even able to flee. And then I'd like to ask a question to the UNHCR, but maybe I'll do that later after you answer these questions. Thank you. Or should I ask just...
Is it also on Myanmar?
Yeah.
Just go ahead. We've got Shabia connected, so I'll let James and then Shabia answer. Go ahead.
Okay, Shabia, good morning to you. I can't see you yet, but anyway. Yeah, if you could sort of speak a little bit about the situation of the Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar, whether there's still a lot of pressure on the part of the Bangladeshi government to send them back to Myanmar, even though it doesn't seem to be a propitious time to do that. Anything you could say on that? I don't think you have a presence, or do you have a presence at all in the country, in Myanmar, that is? Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with James. Yeah, Shabia is connected. Okay, James.
Okay, no, thank you very much for those questions. First of all, on the flow of weapons, it is our understanding. I mean, it's very hard to get reliable data on weapons transfers, but whenever we do get information, it does appear that there are certain arms transfers that still go through to the military. We know that they are reliant on foreign assistance, and particularly in order to both get jet fuel and to get the maintenance services that both their aircraft and some of the more sophisticated artillery systems that they utilize on the battlefield. So they are reliant on foreign technical support in order to keep those systems operational, their planes up to specs and so forth. So yeah, they still are getting foreign assistance for weapon systems. Also, at the same time, though, we are not always sure where they are coming from. But of course, organized crime networks, trafficking networks, both for narcotics, human trafficking, and for arms trafficking are still very active in the country. Of course, China's initial backing of the ethnic armed groups and their offensive in late October was really based around the desire to shut down some of these trafficking networks, primarily human trafficking of Chinese nationals into Myanmar. But of course, the number of victims of trafficking in the country is still massive. I think that the estimates are anywhere from 80 to 100,000 human victims have been trafficked into the country. So it's really a massive problem that still remains, and it's always hard to see where some of these Black economies, how they have their regular sort of transfer points. What is interesting is that as a result of these offensives, many of the border crossing points with their neighbors are now under the control of the ethnic armed groups rather than the Myanmar military. So it'll be very interesting, I think, to see just how that impacts the traffic from China, how it impacts the traffic from Thailand, and then what is the end result of the impact on that, including on humanitarian assistance and its ability to get through borders and to get to the places where it needs to go. The last question you had was just on Rohingya fleeing and on humanitarian operations. Yes, the humanitarian community is still actively trying to deliver aid anywhere where they are still able to get travel authorizations. They're working extremely hard every day under enormous pressures and increasing insecurity. And that includes UNHCR in Rakhine State, even though the flow of humanitarian aid there has really been shut down to a large extent. But I'll leave that for the other agencies to report on. But the Rohingya, of course, have very limited options, which is one of the reasons why so many are looking for any way to get out and into a safe locations. And that includes even, trying these very unseaworthy boat routes, either, directly from Myanmar or out of Cox's Bazar. But I'll leave the rest for my UNHCR colleagues to discuss.
Thank you very much. Yes, Shabia.
Thanks, Lisa, for your question, and good morning to everyone. No, it's a very pertinent question. There are about a million Rohingya refugees still hosted in Bangladesh, and they continue to support them generously. But we know that this is a protracted situation. Humanitarian needs continue to accrue with all the pressures. So what's really important is for support to be sustained to the Rohingya that are outside their country and in Bangladesh. So I think that's really a really critical point to make. And yes, as part of the broader UN footprint, we are present in Myanmar and also providing assistance. Thank you.
Yes, Philippe Motaz.
Yes, Philippe Motaz, the Geneva Observer. At the end of the day, your action is predicated about your funding. Any concerns about the confirmation that the liquidity crisis is severe and will be lasting? That's a question to you in Bangkok. And more generally on that same issue, Alessandra, how are you coordinating this whole thing with New York, the decision, the hiring freeze, et cetera, the mechanism on Myanmar affected by it, or in Syria, or OHCHR comes to you and says, this is mission critical, we need absolutely to hire people, we need new services. How are you coordinating this with New York, and who is in charge here in Geneva? Thank you.
Maybe I can just answer this question first very quickly. There is no coordination of this kind in place. I mean, the Secretariat as a Secretary General is sitting in New York, has a controller who is in charge of making the house run. They are taking the decision. We are just applying them here at the UN office. For what concerns the UN office, the agencies have got their own budgets, and we are just implementing and tailoring the decisions that are taken to New York. In New York to the Geneva office, and sometimes the needs here are specific, like we saw last year about the energy costs, but that is something that is made under the framework of what the instructions that we get from New York, from the Secretary General and its controller. As for the other parts of the Secretariat and the agencies, of course, I cannot speak for that. And maybe James, you have some information, some answers on the issue of liquidity for your operations.
Well, I mean, the information that I can give is that we get most of our funding, almost all of our funding is from extra budgetary sources. We have to directly appeal to donors to help support my team, and or else we could not operate, and that includes the vast majority of people that we have on the ground that are trying desperately to gather information remotely, and it's a very labor-intensive process, and so it's not ideal to be entirely extra budgetarily funded But I would say that it puts us in a better position right now than we would be if we were funded by the regular budget. So it's a sort of a double-edged sword in this case, but we seem to be on the right side of the blade.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, Philippe.
A quick follow-up. Would it have any impact on the SHP?
Sorry. Then again, you are speaking about the liquidity problems
crisis,
for here. To the best of my knowledge, the strategic heritage plan has been decided and funded a long time ago by a separate decision of the General Assembly. So the works continue. I don't see other hands up. Jeremy, you also wanted to speak about the appeal of the High Commissioner this morning, speaking indeed about funds.
Yes, I guess that the timing is, am I on air? Yes, the timing is perfect to follow up on your question. So the High Commissioner Volker Turk has just issued the UN Human Rights Office's appeal for 2024, calling for a significant increase in funding for our office. He warned that the office is still drastically short of funds to more effectively advance human rights globally. So to that end, he appealed for $500 million in extra budgetary resources to boost our ability to address some of the biggest human rights challenges we are facing now and will face in the future.
Thank you, Jeremy. Don't see other hands up on this. So thanks very much to James Rodhaver for connecting from Bangkok. Thank you, Jeremy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, to James? Okay.
Mr. Rodhaver, could you just, you mentioned that your funding is extra, it's beyond the normal budgetary process. Who are your main donors?
I would rather not discuss that. It's part, I believe it would be accounted for in the annual report of the office. But at any given time, I could not tell you exactly which funds are being spent at any given time. But we do get funding from, I believe at this point, 6 different member states. So that my team can continue to function, but I'd rather not go into the specifics unless I had the consent of those donors to release that publicly.
Jeremy has a little bit more.
Yes, I can just provide a bit more information, not specifically in the case of Myanmar, but last year we had 283 million in voluntary contributions. So I can tell you that the top 5 contributors were the European Union, the US, Sweden, Germany, and Norway. Generally. Not specific to mine. No.
Yeah, there is I think maybe the need for a little bit of clarity between the regular budget, which has been approved by the General Assembly, as you know, at the end of last year. The crisis is about liquidity over that budget, and it's about the regular budget. And then we have the extra budgetary funds, and that is a different issue because, of course, as you know, depend on the donors, and the donors, maybe as Jeremy said, these are additional funds, and we are doing also requests for funding, which are extra budgetary. And of course, please, again, remember that this is concerning the secretariats, and the agencies have got their own budget and funding, as Christian is nodding. So I don't see this time other hands up. Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Thank you, Jeremy. It seems Christian has some update on Gaza, so I'll give him the floor again.
Yeah, it was good I stuck up here because I just got a little update on the convoys, as some of you have asked about the missions to Nasser, just to update that. So yesterday, 3 missions to NASA were planned. That was one for food for IDPs, patients, and health workers. This mission was delayed and could eventually not go ahead. Another one for fuel was denied. A third one for the medical supplies did go ahead yesterday. Denials and delays are part of a pattern which impede humanitarian supplies from reaching hospitals and could make them non-functional. Today, another attempt was made to get food to Nasser, but due to delays around 500 meters from the checkpoint, the crowd self-distributed the food and it could once again not reach Nasser.
Thank you very much for this live updates, Christian. I see a hand up, Emma.
Just a quick one on that. I mean, how close to starvation are they in the hospital? Have you had any reports of how bad it is? When was the last time they got food?
We only get the only reports we get are about the desperate situation inside the hospital, with people sheltering everywhere they can, patients on the floor, sometimes surgeries having to take place on the floor. But I do not have details on how bad the starvation or water or whatever situation is.
Yes, Christian.
Yes, Christian. Sorry, I have to also add to this. Can you explain a little bit to us how far is it from the checkpoint to Nasser? And do the WHO convoys travel with security, or how does this happen that the supplies that are meant for a hospital are actually being distributed by people in the streets? Thank you.
So I don't have many more details than what I just told you. The only part I have in this point is that the delays around 500 meters from the checkpoint, that's when the crowd basically self-distributed. But I do not have geographics of how far the checkpoint then again is from the hospital, so I don't know. We only know that the area around the hospital is an active fighting area and people have been warned, and hence there I assume is a checkpoint, but I don't have a layout of the land or a map or anything. I also don't have a list of how often. I recall we had once a report about a truck with fuel that was also stopped in search for food. But since there was no food, it was going forward. So I don't have figures on how often it happens, but to put this into context, it just describes the terribly devastated situation, desperate situation of the people, of the population, and to stop UN convoys, to stop any truck they see, to try to get anything to eat or fresh water from it.
Lisa?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Hi, Christian again. Yeah. Why were the missions denied? Who denies them? And then you talk about delays occurring. What is that due to? Or that inspections or what? Yeah. Thank you.
I don't have more than what I just read out. This was last minute information I just got now. But of course, checkpoints are run by the Israeli authorities, by the military, and denials come from them.
Don't see other hands up. Let me see on the platform, it's fine. So thank you very much. Before we let Christian go, you just have 2 quick announcements of press conferences.
Yeah, just briefly, very different topics. As you've got the invites already, so it's just a reminder of today's embargoed virtual press conference on World Cancer Day. That's happening at 2 o'clock, again, an embargoed one. You got the invite ahead of World Cancer Day on 4 February. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, will release the latest estimates on the global burden of cancer. And WHO will publish a country survey showing how a majority do not provide adequate cancer and palliative care. The second, right after that is at 3 o'clock, a virtual press briefing, the opening press conference of the Global Tobacco Controlling Governing Bodies, the conference of the parties number 10 and the meeting of the parties number 3, which will start on Monday in Panama. And it's about all the main tobacco control decisions being taken care of. So 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. So thanks, and I let you go this time for real. Let me turn to my right. Catherine Wissou is with us, also for the announcement of a report.
Oui, et on va rester dans l'enfer de Gaza. Je parle en français, mais mes notes seront en anglais. Demain, donc, la conférence des Nations Unies sur le commerce et le développement publiera une évaluation rapide de la détérioration sociale et économique à Gaza depuis le début de l'opération militaire le 7 octobre 2023. Le rapport quantifie la perte en PIB, les délais auxquels on peut s'attendre pour la reconstruction de l'économie gazaoui, les effets durables sur la pauvreté et les dépenses des ménages. Il brosse un tableau impressionnant des défis à venir en matière de développement. Nos experts ont utilisé des images satellites de pointe et des données officielles pour estimer le niveau actuel de contraction de l'économie. Un communiqué de presse sera également diffusé avec le rapport demain. J'ai demandé à nos experts ce matin, vers 14h demain, ça devrait être disponible. Il n'y aura pas d'embargo et pas de briefing sur ce rapport, mais bien sûr, si vous avez des questions ou des demandes d'interview, on pourra les prendre en compte. Merci.
Merci, Cathy. Des questions à la CNUSED? J'en vois pas sur la plateforme non plus. Donc, merci beaucoup. And let's go now to Claire. Last but definitely not least, you also have an announcement.
Yes, good morning, everybody. We sent out a press release this morning. The World Meteorological Organization has officially confirmed a new record temperature for continental Europe. This was 48.8 degrees Celsius, converted into Fahrenheit, that's 119.8 degrees Fahrenheit. It was recorded in Italy on the 11th of August, 2021, at an automated weather station in Sicily. And the findings were published today in the International Journal of Climatology. Why did it take so long for us to verify this temperature? The investigations like this one are very, very lengthy procedures. We want to get it right. They are very painstaking because it is important that we have confidence, the world has confidence that our global records are properly measured, that they are verified. And why does it matter? It matters because the extremes that we are sort of monitoring, verifying, they're a snapshot of our changing climate. And this is a quote from the WMO Weather and Climate Extremes Rapporteur, Professor Randall Cerveny. He said, "The extremes presented before the WMO for adjudication are snapshots of our current climate. It is possible, even likely, that greater extremes will occur across Europe in the future. When such observations are made, new evaluation committees will be formed to adjudicate these observations as extremes." We do have a number of ongoing investigations, and one of them, which will be coming up hopefully in the next few weeks, is into whether Tropical Cyclone Freddy did indeed break the record last year as the world's longest lasting tropical cyclone. So we don't do this for fun. You know, it is a very, very important way of record keeping of our changing climate. And just separately, we sent out a press release yesterday just to say that the World Meteorological Organization has appointed Co Barrett as Deputy Secretary General and Thomas Asari as Assistant Secretary General. Co Barrett is currently Senior Advisor for Climate at the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Those of you who follow climate policy, climate science closely will also know that she used to be Vice Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And Thomas Asari is currently Controller and Director of the Division of Financial and Administrative Management at UNICEF. So they will join WMO and complete the leadership lineup under Celeste Saulo. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Claire. Let me see, Jamie.
Good morning, Claire. Thank you for that. I know that there's been some projections about the likelihood that the world will see record high global temperatures in the next 5 years, 10 years, different numbers. Today, you're specifically talking about Europe. What can we say about projections, or what has WMO said about projections for Europe specifically being vulnerable to a new temperature record? Is there anything that's been said on that?
The World Meteorological Organization last year, when we released the provisional state of the global climate report, and we confirmed it in January, said that 2023 was the hottest year on record globally. And we've said at the time that given that we are now in an El Nino year, and typically El Nino has its biggest impact on temperatures the year after its development. So it is possible, and this is what Professor Saulo has also said, it's possible that we may have a new global temperature record again this year. For Europe specifically, we will be releasing a report in April on the state of the climate in Europe. And whilst it will look back to 2023, obviously there will be some comments which are salient for 2024 and the future. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they have done quite detailed fact sheets, regional fact sheets. And so if you are specifically interested in Europe, in the Mediterranean, I recommend that you look at those, because they are very, very detailed. And basically, yes, the Mediterranean is one of the global hotspots, both in terms of heat and water stress. And that's from the IPCC.
Okay, so other questions for WMO? No, I don't see any. So thank you very much, Claire. This leaves me only with a few announcements. We have already given you the information about the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. They have started the review of the reports. Today it's Niger, but as I told you at the last briefing, Tajikistan, Italy, Turkmenistan, Greece, Oman, Djibouti, and Central African Republic are next in line. The Committee on the Rights of the Child will have next Thursday afternoon a meeting with the state parties, and then they will close on Friday their 95th session. And this is basically what I have for you. Just to remind you, and I think we needed that from the 1st to the 7th of February, the international community celebrates World Interfaith Harmony Week. And I think we have a lot of need of that. So thank you very much to you all. And I'll see you that would be Rolando. Bon appetit. Thank you.